I was exhausted. After hours of nonstop driving, all I wanted was a bed, a hot shower, and a few hours of sleep. When I saw that roadside motel with its blinking neon lights, it felt like a blessing. I checked in quickly, not caring much about the place. It was simple, almost run down, but seemed good enough for the night. As soon as I entered the room, I dropped my backpack on the floor and threw myself on the bed. The mattress was a bit too soft, and the air conditioner made a constant, irritating noise, but I was so tired that none of it mattered. However, what caught my attention was the door of the room next to mine. It was ajar. I found it odd, but maybe the guest had forgotten to close it properly. I decided not to think much of it. Night fell, and I finally managed to fall asleep, but it didn't last long. At some point, I woke up with the feeling that there was someone outside the room. I could hear light footsteps in the hallway and, every now and then, a muffled sound, like someone murmuring. My first reaction was to ignore it. Maybe it was just another guest arriving late. I closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep, but the sound wouldn't stop. I got out of bed and went to the door, opening it slowly. The hallway was empty. Everything seemed normal except for the door next to mine, which was still open, but dark inside. I returned to my room, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the sounds persisted. Now they seemed to be inside the room, as if someone was walking around the bed, breathing beside me. My heart raced. Again, I went to the door, looked into the empty hallway, and this time I approached the room next door. A chill ran down my spine as I stared into the dark, empty room. It felt as though something was staring back at me, even though no one was there. I shut my door firmly, locking it. I decided to call the reception, but the phone had no dial tone. My discomfort only grew, and the noise seemed to be getting closer and closer. The only solution was to lock myself in the bathroom, sit on the floor, and wait for it to pass. When the sun finally began to rise, I was able to leave the room. I went down to the reception, intending to complain about the sleepless night. I asked the receptionist who was in the room next to mine, and he looked at me with a confused expression. "That room's been unoccupied for weeks," he said, as if it were nothing unusual. I knew it hadn't been a dream. I had seen, heard, and felt something. Someone or something had been there that night. It was supposed to be a quick stop. My girlfriend and I had been on the road for hours, and it was already late, so we decided to spend the night at a roadside motel. The simple, dimly lit facade didn't inspire much confidence, but we didn't have many options. The receptionist, a middle-aged man with deep dark circles under his eyes, greeted us with indifference and handed us the key to a ground floor room. The room was basic, with a double bed and a small TV, but we were so tired that all we wanted was to sleep. We lay down right after a quick shower. The silence of the road outside, interrupted occasionally by the sound of a passing car, was almost relaxing. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside. It was as if someone was walking around the cars in the parking lot. At first, I thought it was another guest returning to their room, but the steps seemed methodical, as if they were circling the vehicles. I slowly got up, trying not to wake my girlfriend, and went to the window. When I gently pulled the curtain aside, I saw 2 figures near our car. They were rummaging, crouched beside the driver's door. My heart raced. I went back to the bed, trying to think of what to do. The last thing I wanted was to cause panic, but I knew we had to act fast. I whispered in my girlfriend's ear, telling her that I thought someone was trying to steal the car. She remained silent, but I could feel her breathing quicken. I got out of bed and, as quietly as I could, got dressed. I decided to step outside discreetly to see what was going on. As soon as I opened the door to the room, the sensation of being watched hit me immediately. The two men turned toward me, and before I could react, one of them pulled out a gun and pointed it at me. They ordered me to approach quietly. What terrified me most was that they didn't just want the car. They told me to wake up my girlfriend and have her come outside. My stomach dropped. It was no longer just a robbery. I knew we were in real danger. With trembling hands, I did as they asked. I brought her down to the car, and one of the men forced us inside. Panic consumed me, but I had no choice. We drove along the road for a few miles, with them dictating the route. At that moment, all I could think about was that we might never make it out of this situation. Fortunately, at some point on the deserted road, they simply told us to get out of the car and run. I grabbed my girlfriend's hand, and we ran without looking back. When I glanced over my shoulder, the men were already in our car, disappearing into the darkness. We made it to a gas station a few miles away and asked for help. That night was the longest and most terrifying of my life. I never found out what really motivated the kidnapping, but the lingering feeling that something worse could have happened still haunts me. I was returning from a long business trip, and although I was tired, I still had a long way to go before reaching home. When I saw that roadside motel with a flickering neon sign, I figured it would be best to spend the night there and continue my journey well-rested the next day. The place seemed a bit run down, but I didn't mind. I checked in quickly and headed straight to my room. The space was simple but functional. A double bed, a small closet, and an old tube TV mounted on the wall. It wasn't the kind of place you'd want to spend much time in, but it served its purpose for a night's sleep. I had barely lain down on the bed when I heard knocking at the door. The knocks were soft, but persistent. I thought it might be the receptionist, perhaps with some notice or something I had forgotten during check-in. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with a woman. She seemed nervous, distressed. Her clothes were a bit disheveled, and there was something odd in her gaze, as if she were desperately searching for something. She asked to use the phone in my room. She said she was lost, needed to make an urgent call, and that her cell phone had no signal. I hesitated. There was something about her that didn't inspire confidence, but at the same time, her desperate expression made me relent. I let her in, and she grabbed the phone with trembling hands. The room was filled with an unsettling silence as she dialed the number, but the call didn't seem to go through. The whole time, she kept glancing at the door, as if expecting someone to show up at any moment. I asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer. She just left the room, saying she would try the reception. I stood there, frozen, thinking about how strange the whole situation had been. The next morning, I went down to the reception to check out and mention the incident to the receptionist. He looked at me with a puzzled expression. He said there was no one staying that night matching the description I gave, and no calls had been made from my room. A chill ran down my spine. Later, while I was fueling up at a gas station, I heard on the radio about a missing woman. The description matched exactly the woman who had entered my room the night before. I still wonder to this day if she had really been there or if my mind had played tricks on me. Either way, the memory of that woman and her troubled look still haunts me.